Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the show. I have the one and only Clif High with me again today. He is so gracious and so generous with his time. Before we get started, folks, I just wanted to say that I chose to do this show today, June 5th, to pay homage to the very, very brave men that stormed Normandy, claimed that beach, and effectively winning the war. But I pay my respects every single year to the best warfighting generation that this world has ever seen. And Cliff was gracious enough to allow me to choose this day. And so I would just like to dedicate this show, this time, to their memory, to their sacrifice. May we make them proud. May we carry their courage and bravery into the future to create the America that they believed in and the one that they sacrificed all for. So with that, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Clif High, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Thank you.
All right. How are you doing? How you been?
Doing fine. Other than the Schumann resonance screwing with sleep, I'm doing good. In fact, I'm doing very well.
Good. We're all very happy to hear it. We love to see you happy. We love to see you cheery.
Well, Heidi has a lot to do with that.
Of course she does. So we'd like to thank Heidi as well for making our very own Uncle Cliff so happy. You both deserve it. And so we're sending you both so many blessings in your life, your relationship together. I love to see her happy. She is my best friend after all. So
we're getting there with her too.
We're getting there. We're getting there. She's amazing. We love Heidi so much. So, folks, I would like to get Cliff's thoughts today on a few things. Anytime I attempt to organize my thoughts and set up some kind of a layout, the way that it usually goes is he and I will get into something and we'll go on a tangent. Who knows where it's going to go? But for the sake of some kind of organization, I would like to cover a few important points regarding the missing scientists. I believe that the number is 11 officially, but we know that there is likely a lot more than that. And I feel that this is very pressing, pertinent information. It actually, I believe that it does coincide a lot with the end of World War II and the Reich's obsession with anti-gravity and anti-gravity devices and the search for these, special devices that would effectively win the war and earn them dominance over really everybody. So I think that this is all coming full circle. We are dealing with elements in modern day that we dealt with in World War I and World War II. So can I get your intro thoughts on this subject matter, please?
Sure. It's very complex, but not very complicated. Okay, so if we look at it, the 11 scientists, there's many more than that, but if we just look at the 11 that are prominent, they actually span over a decade. They're going missing. So it's not like it's all happened in the last month or anything, right? This is a long-standing situation. As we see with Amy, who had one of the scientists who had suicided.
Amy Asgridge, ladies and gentlemen, 34 years old.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to think about this. They all intersect and they all come back to the same environment. One thing you could postulate is that, and we have to do it sort of step by step. So if we understand our reality, we don't understand our reality. Okay, so we have a common shared reality that is formed from the mentition of our finite minds. Our finite minds are enclosed within the infinite absolute. And so we cannot know the absolute because it is unknowable to us, because it's infinite. We can't even postulate much about the absolute because we can't see ourselves outside of it, however much that illusion seems to persist, that you are an individual and I am an individual and we're separate from the absolute. That's all an illusion. This kind of thinking goes all the way back to like Tesla and Walter Russell and all these people ahead of him about vibration. And it goes all the way back to the yogis and all of these kind of people thousands of years ago. Everything is vibration. All of these scientists are essentially working on vibration or frequency, because what they're attempting to do is to find out the underlying substructure that allows them to defeat gravity, to undo that effect. Gravity is itself a vibration. And so necessarily they're looking for a non-harmonious vibration that would interrupt gravity and provide us with all of the free energy and everything that that implies. Our problem is multiplicitous. One big aspect of this problem is what the Zionist religionists within the Department of War are calling demons. Okay, they even those that have studied the gnosis and the delineation provided by the Gnostics for everything from the absolute down to the finite, meaning us, and the demons are in between the absolute and the finite. The demon and an angel, there is absolutely no difference. They're the same individual in the Bible, in the Quran, everywhere. There's no difference between the jinn in the Quran and the angels. Angel is simply that being acting as a messenger. That's all it meant, was a messenger. A daemon was an actor or an operator. That's what it means. It doesn't mean it's an horrid evil thing. It meant that instead of delivering a message, it was intended to do a task. And so we can think of these guys as perhaps even being like automations, not true life forms. Okay. In any event, here's the issue, especially for people like Amy. Our lives and our minds and our conceptions are structured within this rational materialism, reductionist rational materialism. And that does not really account for these other ancillary effects of energy. So Amy and all of her ilk, all of these missing scientists, never contemplated the idea that by attempting to provide disturbing frequencies for gravity, they might be disturbing frequency at a larger level within the greater field and providing an entree for what we would think of as negative frequencies, not necessarily beings, because a demon could indeed be nothing more than a frequency, right? And in fact is. So under those circumstances, it can be seen that people that would investigate this field of endeavor would necessarily be very much like the alchemists of ancient times, where they're stirring their pots trying to get to an elixir to turn lead into gold. And in fact, they end up bringing in energies that are harmful to them, and they go crazy, right? And do all kinds of weird things. And so this frequency aspect of investigating it for anti-gravity will always bring in these dark energies that we do not acknowledge these days. We don't see the world the way that our great ancestors used to when they were doing the alchemy, right? They saw the world as nothing but disembodied frequencies that we as players, we as game pieces within this Matterium had to express. And so they took precautions. And so if you go back in my Old Farts group, we read lots of these ancient hymns in Sanskrit and Avestan. Many of these hymns had like disclaimers at the beginning of them, specific words that were used as a spell to try and ward off harmful effects as side effects from the activity that they were attempting to do. Many of these activities, these disclaimers, these hold harmless clauses, so to speak, many of those went to attempting to put up like protective barriers that would follow you around, because the idea was that we get out of those hymns is that once these energies are unleashed, you don't necessarily close the door. You don't necessarily have that ability as the alchemist to shut them off. And so they might follow you around for days and days and days. So what happens if we get into a situation where rational, reductionist, materialistic scientists, understanding frequency and energy, but not seeing the world as filled with as nothing but energy, then start investigating it? They're going to get their minds to a point where indeed they could be affected by some of these frequencies that they're unleashing in their local environment. This is why you always get the cautions in religions, don't do magic unless you know what you're doing, right? That kind of thing. This is also why manifestation works. This is why they took the bells away, all of the Tartarian bells, because they deal with frequency out in the general environment. They drive away all of the demons. One of the most constant refrains within ancient alchemy, especially Persian and Hindu ancient alchemy, was clang the bell. So before they started their rituals, they would always cleanse the area with the bells to get rid of those energies, to set up the base vibrational frequency in their environment that they wanted to have happen. And so my thinking is that a lot of these people are indeed falling prey to those energies. Some of them, like Amy, the energies may have approached her, and we can get into why it has to do with the female gender, but they may have taken over her mind directly. Many of these other guys may be involved in those energies at a secondary level, such that, they might have been kidnapped by somebody who wanted their information, but that was basically, that kidnap thing was because of the darker energies that they had set loose in their work. And they don't, insofar as I know, take any precautions, however stupid it may seem to the rational mind, to dissuade such energies from floating around and causing you problems. I think that's really a great deal of it. We've seen the whole social order has, for years and years, for decades now, has been under the sway of an influence that led to wokeism, led to COVID, led to all of the lies. And it comes out as all of the lies. Ever since they've been hiding all of these devices for 80 plus years, all the UFOs and stuff, we've gotten into this period of darkness because we are involving ourselves with that the way we have proceeded. The secrecy that they set up is a perfect cover for these kind of energies to manifest. And so we're doing it to ourselves at that level.
May I share something? I'd like to share it with you and get your thoughts on it. And also, I think maybe my subscribers would find this interesting. Years ago, I had a dream that a parasite that pretended to be a snake approached me. And I always felt that that was a very important distinction, or detail rather, that this thing was actually a parasite. It was effectively just a giant worm, or at least it appeared to be, but it was attempting to make itself appear like a snake. And it even did this kind of strange hooking motion with its head as a means to intimidate or frighten me. And it was very interesting the way that it coiled in the way that a snake does, although it was clearly not a snake. Now, this parasite communicated with me telepathically. And to your point about the wokeism, and I'm very interested to hear what you're going to say about the gender thing, because that's really what made me think of it again, is that this creature, this parasite, communicated with me telepathically and told me that it wanted to steal my gender. I am a biological woman. I was born a biological woman, and I will die a biological woman. This thing wanted to confuse me and steal my feminine essence, to then sort of get into my head and think that I was either a male, or to confuse me and to create a kind of distortion around the concept of gender. And now, as the dream progressed, my physical form shifted. So I shifted from a human woman into some kind of a cat, a very large predatory cat. And I remember the feeling of my fangs growing. It was a very interesting sensation. I have very vivid dreams, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe it wasn't a dream, I'm not sure. But what happened was I let out this huge roar. If you've ever heard a predatory cat roar, decibels are so low you can feel it in the ground. And as I roared in this thing's face, it flipped and it flopped, and it whatever matrix kept it together was dissolved by this very powerful frequency that I, in some kind of predatory cat form, emitted as a type of response to this threat. And so to the point of with the bells, I believe that one of the many messages that I extracted from this experience, from this dream, had to do with the vulnerability of the parasitic matrix, whatever grid or matrix um, acts to keep parasitic entities, whether physical or non-physical, intact. They're very, very vulnerable to certain frequencies. And the bells, as we know, they were taken down around 1914, so World War I, and they continued to remove the bells from major cities like Dresden, all across Europe, effectively removing the frequency, these beautiful harmonics, these acoustics that, you know, villages and communities depended on for their routine, for their daily activities. But also, I really think that there is something to these harmonics and how they decongest the astral realm, or as I've been calling it lately, the invisible substrate that we inhabit, and makes it almost impossible for parasites, whether physical and or astral parasites, to remain intact. Any thoughts on this?
Sure, you brought up a whole lot of stuff there. Okay, so
you can handle it. We know you can,
yeah,
you can take
it. So let's start with why are witches always portrayed as postmenopausal women? You never see, really, except in modern Disney movies, witches are never portrayed as young, healthy, attractive women. All right. It has to do with the level of iron, ferritin, within their blood. Postmenopausal women have accumulated iron the way that men accumulate iron in their blood. This is key. Okay. It's called ferritin. It's a particular kind of iron. So our hearts are not chambered organs. Okay, so everybody has to understand that. Our hearts are basically a giant aorta that's all twisted until it comes into the shape that we think of as the chambered organ of the heart. When you get to a specific level of thinking, causing specific emotions within your brain, those emotions can affect the rhythm of your heart. We know this, you see this where the big shock and all of a sudden your heart's beating, you know, about ready to come out of your chest when the movie scares you or whatever, the horror film. Some of these things we submit ourselves to deliberately, others are accidental, but the effect is always the same. You get that big rush out of your heart, it beats in a non-ordinary rhythm, and it sets up a vibration that you feel throughout your whole body. This is the aspect that we need to think about here, and that is this aspect of vibration again. So when women are menstruating, they lose iron. This may make them, I have some thinking for this, some reasons for thinking this, but I don't have definitive proof or anything. But that lack of iron may make them more vulnerable to these parasitic energies. And I think of these as energies, disembodied energies, right? And so they are inherently self-serving, and that's negative for us because we are energy producers. We're generators of energy through our hearts, causing a rhythm through all of our many miles of blood vessels. Within the many miles of blood vessels, the rhythm of the heart pumping causes the blood itself to set up a resonant frequency as though you were pulsing on a hose. That hose is filled with magnetic particles called ferritin, the iron in the blood cells. This sends out a giant electromagnetic pulse. A field creates a disturbance in the field, right? And so that draws the parasites. They see us. They feel that energy being broadcast out by us. They want that energy. It sustains them and keeps them alive. They're going to twist our minds because our minds are available to them and they have their own needs and goals. The resonant frequencies of our heart can be changed by externals or by internals. So you can do it to yourself. So this is the key to manifestation. All right. The idea that you're going to visualize something as having been accomplished. And that when you visualize something as having been accomplished, existent, you know, so I have Heidi, I visualized Heidi as my wife for a long time. It's now an accomplishment, right? In doing so, in order to visualize effectively, what you have to do is you have to get that resonance going within your heart. And so we have these emotional triggers or keys throughout our brains and stuff, right? One of them is gratitude. So you become grateful for that which is not yet manifested. You just become grateful for it. Thank universe for Heidi, and it doesn't matter to me when she shows up, right? I'm just not attaching any emotional anxiety or anything to the physical manifestation of it. I'm just having that gratitude thought, projecting it out into universe, setting up the harmonics, and it comes back to me. These parasites, these disembodied energies, not necessarily rational, not necessarily thinking in the way we understand it, are still clever enough to know that what they need to do in order to save themselves, to operate, is to disrupt that ability of humans to have that control over their own manifestation process, right? And so they will trick your brains. They'll do anything they can to make you squirrely, because that keeps you from this coherence of being able to organize and generate your thoughts such that you get a coherent growing and stable frequency out into the field. And so we all see the effects of this on the people around us, right? You see the fentanyl people that have shrunk all the way down into the minimalist possible field they can get, and don't allow anything else to intrude on them. You see the people that are on other kinds of drugs that are very effusive. You see the people on the adrenochrome, on the celebrities that are broadcasting out that that fake brittle identity stuff out there. And so we're all manifesting within this very large matrix of all of these fields. We can speculate, and we can put emotions and motivations and stuff on the energies, but I don't think it's particularly pertinent. It's better to think about them in ways that allow us to describe them, and then to figure out ways to deal with them. And so in the past, the harmonics coming from the bells were global. So they had Tartarian bells here. There have been some magnificent ones discovered recently in New Zealand. They're in Russia. They're everywhere except for where they've taken them away, right? And so I lived in that period of time when there were still bells. So up until maybe the mid 60s, a lot of the small towns and villages in Europe still had all the bells, and Saturday and Sunday the churches would ring them. At first I was annoyed the very first time. It's like, why are you doing all this at 6 a.m, right? But then you get used to it, and then you actually find that you appreciate it, you look forward to it, and Saturdays and Sundays feel different. And it was because of that, because of the energetic influences. So because we're all mental, because everything happens within the mind of the absolute, and we are simply an illusion, there is no solidity. Everything is an effective vibration. Gender is such. All right. So gender is one of the 7 basic principles of Hermes, the Hermetic principles, right? Everything acts with male or female. This is different from polarity. So we have a negative and a positive polarity that also exists as a rule, that one of the 7 Hermetic principles. Gender is a slightly different thing than that. And that has to do with the difference between reception and projection. Men project. Why do they project? Well, because we always have ferritin. We're always the source for the manifestation. Women, not so much. So women do not manifest the same way men do. Manifestation has been something that they've been trying to control forever, because it takes you outside of their effective control structure when you understand that everything in your life is what you manifest, and that you manifest it not by attempting to change the outside world, but rather by changing your internal vibrational state. That's all it takes. Okay, so everybody is doing work, so to speak, trying to, I don't know how they're supposed to do it, coming up with, imageries or whatever, but you have to change your state to reflect the state that you wish that you will be in when it manifests. An aspect of that is gender, because male and female minds do this differently, right? Women have inbuilt reception, but don't have so much projection. Men have projection and very little reception. And so it's just this a level of opposites. That's why the gender confusion is such a big deal. Okay. They want to confuse as many men as possible to get them out of the ability to project. that really they're the evil ones, or it appears that this larger controlling structure, or whatever, demiurge, doesn't really care so much about women. There's not a huge giant push to get women to convert their gender. Rather, it's the other way. And it has to do with the nature of the male and the female minds. Men have both male and female within us. Women have both male and female. However, the nature of our blood at the time of these encounters, whether or not a woman is full of ferritin, postmenopausal or whatever, really affects how she's going to interact with these energies. Because these energies key off of that pulse, that vibrational pulse that comes out of our bodies, an aspect of which is triggered by our heart causing these aortal resonances that cause the ferritin to vibrate, that set up the electromagnetic fields. So too much info?
No, I'm totally following, and I know people are just going to enjoy this so much. And it brings up, so the most psychically potent that I ever was while I was pregnant. And I believe that to your point, I'm just drawing that connection here now. There was a very distinct shift in my emanation. I became pregnant at 19. I was very young, and I knew right away that I was pregnant, almost immediately. And I can tell you that my emanation, the output of my heart, changed. It shifted from almost a prey state, meaning vulnerable, prey energy, woe is me type of thing, very young, very naive. And almost immediately with the conception, it shifted to neutral / predatory. And I was no longer, I guess you could say, received, or I was no longer emanating prey frequency.
Reception, right. You were no longer receiving, you were projecting.
Correct. Yes, and it was just an entirely different experience, and I felt my awakening. And I wonder if any of my viewers would, co-sign on this, how your pregnancies affected your psychic abilities and your spiritual path. So,
okay, so here's the logic behind that, real quick. Okay,
sure.
So the Hindus say that there's 72,000 nadi. A nadi is an intersection of a meridian, an energetic meridian in your body. So I have a copper bracelet thing on here, and that's to tie the two major meridians in the arm together and have that energy flow in order that it may affect the my nascent arthritis, right? So these things function at an energy level. Here's the deal with that. So we have 72,000 nadi. These nadi are every place. You see them wherever the blood vessels separate and all of this. Our bodies are just riddled with these things. A nadi is an intersection. At that intersection, in all of these, but to a greater extent, only the top 72 of these become chakras. Okay, so a collection of nadi in a big junction is called a chakra. A chakra is the Hindu word for wheel, Sanskrit word for wheel. But people miss something there. It's not a wheel stationary, it is the actual spinning part of a wheel. So it's different than the word for a stationary wheel just sitting there on the side of the road. This is because these vibrations join together and they cause vortices, little tiny whirling vortices. And that's what the Hindus named as wheels, because they were looking at them from like on the top down, not seeing them as a tornado, but seeing them as like a spinning plate from the top, right? And so that's what happened when you became pregnant. Instantly, you had started forming the energy nadi and connections within your body for that child. So your vortices instantly start growing. And so thus, of course, your psychic nature is going to change, because until some point of separation, until some point of the infant's mind forming to a certain degree, you are the repository, you're the controller for all of those new vortices. So, and this also is what gives you see the pregnant woman that comes across an accident and flips the fucking car off.
Right.
that kind of thing. That level of power and stuff comes to the woman because she has effectively added so many of these energy centers. And as an aside, So I'm 73, but I don't act 73. Okay. My body does not move as though I'm 73. A big contributor to that, other than diet and all of this kind of stuff, is the energy work I do for myself. And I concentrate on 5 specific chakras. And the goal of the energy work is to make them spin at the same level that they did when I was like 25. Okay, they'll find their own optimal level, and then you get them all synced up. So this is a part of a long process, and I'll be doing this work for a number of years, but the goal is that maybe I'll persist another 70 years, very effective, and be this fit all the way through those 70 years, because there's no point in living to be 140 if you spend the last 30 or 40 of them, invalided, right? Anyway, so when the woman becomes pregnant, many women wouldn't know. They're not that perceptive. Maybe they're drunk. Maybe they're doing too many drugs and it's dulling the mind. But those women that would become instantly aware of this are keying in at the psychic level. Okay, so that's what you're actually perceiving, is that extra energy coming into your body. And then your body decides, oh, I'm going to make a new human out of this, right? Many, you'll see horrid practices referred to in like the Talmud and many of these ancient alchemical and esoteric documents. I won't say religious, but they talk about how women will manipulate their reproductive cycle in order to get power. Okay, and I'm not going to go into any of the details, but in the past, humans have known this about women, and that some of the greater female figures in history may have been, in fact, manipulating this, right? So in a crude way, it would be like getting pregnant and then having an abortion at a specific point in time while you can still capture those energies and retain them for yourself for some period of time, right? So as I say, it's dark and it's ugly, and we don't want to necessarily go there, but it all reinforces this idea that humans are not as we've been told by our schooling, and that we live in a world that is not at all like the mainstream paradigm would have you understand it. And that's why, in my opinion, most of the ills in our social order are arising, is because we're trying to live in a paradigm that does not reflect reality in any way, and in fact has been deliberately overlaid on our reality to confuse us all by some evil parties somewhere. So I would buy it 100%, Jenny, that you were super psychic at that period in time. And it all makes sense. And it also points to the idea that you were very refined in your self-examination, right? To be able to understand that, at that level, and not just put it down to something in your body.
Well, and to your point also, my first 2 children were male, and I had a wildly different experience carrying male children. And then with my daughter, I still experienced a great deal of psychic activity, but it was absolutely different. It was very different. And
again, the gender expressed itself. Yep.
Yes, it did. So just fascinating topic here, so interesting. And I'd like to get your thoughts on the idea of the heart, the anatomical heart, which, as we know, is not simply an organ or the way that it's been sort of, described to us for many years in mainstream academia. I've been thinking about it an awful lot. I spent a lot of time thinking about the human heart, the electromagnetic frequencies, 500 times more powerful than the frequencies emitted by the human brain, and it beats. And I thought, so does a clock. It goes. I believe that the heart is a timekeeper. I believe that our hearts keep time. And I think part of the war that we're in the middle of between principalities, between light and dark, the Zionists versus everybody else, I believe that there is a war for dominance of the time field, which really does, anti-gravity comes into it, plasma comes into it. But I do believe that our hearts were designed in part, along with many other things, to keep the soul and to keep the container, which that's us, we're containers of souls, aligned with a specific place, time, state of being.
Keep us in the reality, correct. So if you think about it, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so any attempt to sort of knock our timekeeper off kilter using harmonic warfare, somatics warfare, replacing or redirecting the energy of the heart, like literally all they have to do is knock it off kilter, because the heart is going to do what it does regardless. So I literally think they've just invented a new highway for our naturally occurring emissions to just get knocked off kilter and go like take their new highway, effectively generating through our own ability, the heart's ability to generate reality, and to keep time. Basically, they're tricking us into veering off into some strange version of the timeline. Am I onto something, Clif?
Yeah, you're onto it. This is a description that you get in, there's only 2 books that remain from the Cathars. I forget the name of the one, but it's it was in French when I first came across it. It's like 1,000 pages. And the first 40 or 50 pages are all about this understanding. Okay, but we have to be very careful about this. There is no such thing as time. Okay. So what we call time is duration, but our hearts are indeed synced up with the duration of the field. And they, the bad guys, they didn't invent a new highway because they've been using the same old playbook forever. But what they know is they absolutely know that if they can put in particular thoughts into your head, it will disturb your relationship with your heart, right? It will make you think you live in a world that doesn't exist. But because the brain is so powerful, the subconscious, as long as they can get that down into your subconscious, that subconscious is where manifestation originates. This is why you have gratitude for something not yet manifest, and it manifests because you push it down into your subconscious, and your subconscious has no choice but to make the reality fit what is inside it. And so you have an image of a car or whatever the hell you want. In my case, it was Heidi, and it came to that point where universe had to cooperate because it was so deeply embedded in the subconscious there, right? So you're quite correct about that. Now, the beat of the heart is really interesting relative to what I call the event stream within this eternal now. There is no time, there's no past, there's no future. People speculate there's no such thing as time travel. I can dispute that on so many different ways. It laughingly, I've done that with scientists, and they're just astounded because they've never thought of it. So just consider this one aspect. Here we are in this particular year, 2026. Our bodies are polluted with chemicals, absolutely tons of them, microplastic, all of this weird shit in the environment. Well, our bodies are recreated 22 trillion times a second, constantly being recreated. We're not solid. It's all energy and stuff. If there were time travel, they would send our vibrations back in time or ahead in time. How would our vibrations going back in time manage to create the microplastics that are already in our gut? They couldn't, because that microplastic substrate vibration didn't exist in the past. So it couldn't recreate anything from the future in the past. So our bodies cannot be physically sent in time either direction. No one's can. Time is an entirely different thing. It's extremely powerful. Most people don't think about it correctly, but you're on to this. The Cathars understood this, and that's why they led into this book, 1,000+ pages describing our universe, and discussed basically the heartbeat of universe, which is this event stream, and it comes from this never-ending source. The pleroma is called in Greek. You could call it the absolute or whatever, right? It's the supreme consciousness. And the way that this works is that our hearts tie us to this manifestation train of the event stream. And they tie us to that through the vibrations within our body that are caused by the heart pumping through all of the veins, miles and miles of veins and aortas filled with fluids, right? And so in a sense, we're very much like the tendrils that come out of quantum computers, right? That stick out into the universe in order to sense stuff coming through. A lot of our interaction with universe is through that vibration that's caused by our hearts, that goes into our blood. And that's why we're picking it up in this fluid state. If it was solid, if we didn't have blood, we would not be this psychic. We wouldn't be able to be as receptive to the changes in the environment. So you've seen cymatics where they take sound and they make sand or water vibrate in interesting patterns. That's basically what our bodies are. And when our bodies are vibrating a particular way, we will have a very good, clean, clear shape to our vibration that will be sympathetically able to have a resonance with what's out in the universe. Thus, manifestation comes about, right? You have this gratitude feeling, you push it out into universe, you just push it out all over because it's emanating out of your body. And in the non-visible world of our now, it is picking up, it's getting picked up by the event stream, which is going to cooperate and produce the events that you're asking for. This is also what the bad guys, the demiurge and all of these people want to disrupt by throwing these things in to disrupt your mind, because they can't directly, at a low level, cause disruption that would interfere with us. They could if they came along and shocked us with, cattle prods and stuff, but that's too overt for them because we would react, etc. They have to be relatively subtle in their attempts to control us and control our universe. This is, for one of the reasons, this is why circumcision exists for males. Okay, it takes males out of the manifestation process to be circumcised because they lose 5 million plus sensors. There's these specific seven chakras. You have 2 in your head, A and B, 1 in the back and 1 sort of down by the throat a little bit. Then you have another one that's down at the base of the throat, and you have 1 over your liver, and then you have 1 in the groin, and then you have 1 in each knee. This is why it's not a good idea to get a knee transplant, because you lose that vibrational chakra when you do. So you're actually altering your physical form to that level. Anyway, so they know these 5 chakras are the largest and the closest to a physical manifestation. And so you get some people that can actually see them, that see auras, and they can tell you, oh, your aura around your neck is pinched, that kind of thing. And you'll get sick or whatever, later on you get a sore throat. Anyway, so they're able to see it. But the point being that the vibrational frequency of these 7 are large enough to be more perceptible than the other 72,000, right? And they disrupt our ability to get at these chakras because of what they do to the paradigm that lives within our subconscious. So they're not really so much after your conscious mental state, but they know that if they can make your conscious mental state so wonky you don't know what your gender is, you're not manifesting anything. You're their slave, right? You're going to react the way they want you to, just by these triggers that they put into your mind, causing you to go become violent and want to, assassinate Trump or whatever, right? And it all happens because of the disruption of the harmony of the hormones in your body and your mental state. If they can disrupt that harmony, then they've got you. And that's why things like meditation, rhythmic, a dedication to even like rhythmic dance. You'll see people dance and they'll be in a meditative state, right? And so all of these things are good because they're reinforcing your control over your biophysical harmony that keeps you independent from all of these energies. And so we see when this breaks down, for whatever reasons, that people do wonky things, harm themselves and so on. So these missing scientists, to bring it back to that, in my thinking, those that have gone missing, that have not been kidnapped, those that were suicides and are totally gone, had their minds affected to the point that they were able to be easily motivated to do these acts to themselves, right? And I think that was the case, that they were not necessarily like, left to themselves. Would they have been suicidal? Probably not, right? It was the nature of what they were doing, how close they got to it, and then there is a force. And so there's somebody whose pay grade is so much higher than Trump that he can't stop chemtrails.
Right.
He's talked about them. He wants them gone, but he can't do a damn thing about it. Doesn't even bring it up, right? So there is some force that is doing that throughout our entire planet. And that force is, in my opinion, is not operating in in the interest of humanity. And that
Well, absolutely not.
well, see, there's the rub though. This is why I'm still debating that. It's possible that chemtrails are actually an attempt to aid us, as screwy as it sounds. Okay, with all
Yeah,
the
you're gonna have to explain that to me like I'm 5.
okay, and so
Please.
here's the idea, right? That in spite of all the physical damage, there may have been whoever it is that's beyond Trump's pay grade that organizes all of this may have come to the conclusion that it needed to shield all of humanity from these energies, and that was the approach they took, was to try and shield the planet rather than bring these energies up and try and change humanity to better fight them. So it would be like a passive kind of a shielding, and it would cause us problems and cause problems for the bees and the other insects and birds, etc. But their thinking is the greater good is being done because we're being shielded from these energies. I don't necessarily buy that, because it has some validity, but there's also all the energies operating even though there are chemtrails, and we're getting all this nasty stuff even so. So we could say, okay, well, maybe they were doing good and it just didn't work and it failed, right? Their approach didn't work. I don't know that that's valid, but I do know that substantially there are energies that are really affecting all of humanity now, and they've been on this planet very seriously active since the 1960s. We didn't see them so much in the 50s. They didn't have a really good, strong foothold. They were there, but they weren't so strong and blatant. And this is where we're at now, I think, is that we have to make a lot of decisions. The more humans we wake up to this idea of the 3, 6, and 9, everything is vibration, then the more we can get us closer to a paradigm that allows us to deal with these things in a rational form, right? Where we can be realistic about what we're dealing with. So it's kind of funny to say rational when you're talking about all this woo and this, the invisible world, but
There. People are catching up. People are catching up. It's inevitable. You mentioned something. So folks, if you're subscribed to my channel, you know what I'm about. You know how I operate. You know how I work. I extract a lot of messages from my higher self. She gives me dreams and visions and visitations and all kinds of things. Whether they are actually happening or not doesn't really matter that much to me, because I believe that they're happening, and I extract the data or the wisdom and I integrate it or I don't. And so what I'd like to say is I was visited several years ago in an astral vision by 2 military officers. They were not affiliated with any known military. I didn't recognize the uniform or the insignia, but they looked a lot like us, like just regular looking people, very healthy, they good looking, healthy. And to your point about the chemtrails, they did allude that there were multiple sides of the war, if you will, including a benevolent faction, because, and I do quotes because they'll do whatever it takes, whether people sometimes will get hurt. So it can't all be rainbows and sunshine, you guys. That's just not reality. But they did mention that certain quadrants, that's their word, not mine, of the sky needed to be hidden through the generation of weather events or false skies, because those quadrants of the sky were reserved for aerial battles, of which the surface population, they didn't want us to see it. And so they let me know that there were good guys, bad guys, and a few sort of private corporations in between that have this technology now. And basically everybody is just throwing this technology at the atmosphere, trying to create storms and earthquakes and waves. And I guess like multiple people have it, multiple factions have this technology now, and it's kind of just a war for the atmosphere. So I thought that was really funny, is they think that they're doing us a favor by blocking out certain parts of the night sky, because they don't want us to see them fight. Like, I'm ready. I want to see it. I'd like to see it, but realistically,
well, we sort of are seeing it these days, all the fireballs and stuff coming in.
It's really, yeah. And they also did allude to some kind of a synthetic buffer that existed in the atmosphere that required a great deal of maintenance, but like a lot of things, it has a shelf life, and there was no longer these maintenance operations that were being done. So there's a sort of breakdown of this buffer occurring, and human beings were basically going to be getting a view of a genuine view of what they called the true sky, which alludes to a false sky. But I thought that that was really interesting. And I know that a lot of people here that watch, we've talked about the problems for many years. We've talked about the source of the issue. We've talked about the bad guys, the good guys, everybody in between. But as I get older, and my kids get older, my thoughts shift from focusing on the problem to focusing on the solutions, if there are any. And so one of the better things that I've been able to come up with is the idea that acoustics, like natural harmonics, natural acoustics versus this kind of synthetic, forced, invoked, strange, distorted um, harmonic that we all encounter, it really comes down to pushing the natural one over, or sort of like it's like they're warring like this. Basically, whichever network is bulkier, whichever one has more human hearts behind it, that was the network that was essentially going to win or dominate the field. And alternatively, so I think we need to get the bells back up. I think we have to put these bells up in every town and just reinstate natural acoustics. I think that that would do wonders for people's mental health, mood, because sometimes that's all it takes. Is when you're in a good mood, you make good choices. When you're in a bad mood, you make bad choices. It's the difference between choosing a shitty timeline and a wonderful timeline. And sometimes it really just comes down to one choice, one individual choice. And also, I'm really big on the trees, the old growth. Think of the cedars, think of the redwoods. I believe that the acoustics and harmonics from the old growth seem to have some kind of really awesome interaction with our hearts and kind of help bring us back into just natural order. What do you think about the trees?
Harmony, yeah. Yeah. So that goes to the point of the singing cedars, the ringing cedars.
Cedars.
Right, out of Russia. So you're correct about a lot of that. It was done deliberately. This goes back to the change of the musical tones for the hertz level of the musical scale, right? 440, which is what we labor under now, versus 432 hertz for the note A, for the A note, right? That sets off on a different set of harmonics. It does you no good, by the way, in my opinion, to go to your YouTube and find a YouTube video that says it's going to put out 432 hertz for you to hear and all of that, because all of that is mediated by the speakers of your computer. And so you're not going to ever achieve 432 hertz out of these speakers because they've been hobbled. They won't actually allow natural harmonics. I got myself some time back a set of natural harmonic tuning forks, and to double check this, right? And the 432 hertz coming out of the PC here does not in any way cause a sympathetic vibration in a 432 hertz tuning fork. But if I put on one of these little devices that weights a tuning fork and make it into 440, then instantly it starts having a sympathetic vibration to the supposed 432 that's coming out of the speakers. So there's that. There's also those people that are attempting to do light, okay, that are attempting to get you to have different experience through light, and they're attempting to do it through colors and this kind of thing. And it doesn't do any good, again, to use computer screens to try and get any effect from that, right? The light systems and all these other things that are supposedly going to heal you with all these flashy colors going up the computer screens, all they're doing is putting out blue light. They can't mechanically overcome the limitations of the actual screen. So they've got us hobbled. Now, when I first started getting into computers, that was not the case. You could get a pure 432 hertz tone. You could get, you could tune your screen to produce more yellows, more greens, or whatever, give it a different substrate for its vibrational output. And all of those were taken away just by edict, right? The manufacturers got together and set a standard that it was like 5 people that set the standard, and we all have to live with it. True, they think they're doing it according to the standards of the civilization in which they're operating, but nonetheless, they're doing us all disservice. And so this is a very intense war. It's been going on for centuries, thousands of years perhaps. And it's insidious in that it is everywhere, right? You can't get raw milk. You can't have the ability to make your own butters. This is just restricted from you. Okay, you can't have pure water. They got to put fluoride in it. If they don't put fluoride in it, they've got all these other chemicals. So we're constantly under these battles, under the assaults of this large war that's pitted, basically the demiurge against everybody else. What it wants, or I don't know what its goal is, but its mechanism is to distort the reality and the paradigm. And they started with that in the 1700s during the Age of Enlightenment, when we adopted and it was forced on everybody thereafter, the idea of Cartesian space, right, left, up, down, back and forth, that kind of thing, right? All of these things didn't exist as the paradigm for our world prior to the 1700s. If you look into Fomenko and history, you see that the period of time between 1600 and 1742 was very key, that this was where the battle really erupted out into the open. Fomenko has an interesting view of history that I think is very much closer to ours, and that our view of 1700 from the Western perspective is total bullshit. And that a lot of things were going on in that period of time from 1500s onward with John Dee, the people trying to do scrying and contact these energies and control them, the wizardry and the sorcery and all of that kind of stuff coming out. All the secret societies came out during that period of time. So that was when the battle really became joined. And we're in this further extension of it now. Trump is participating in this, right? He understands the nature of the battle. He's not at war with Iran. He doesn't give a shit about Iran. What he cares about are the forces that are using Iran as a tool. And that's what he's doing. He's eliminating that as a tool against us. And he's done that with a lot of these. This war, I suspect, will go on for some considerable period of time, long after Trump, long after you and I have all passed. We'll still be ongoing with this. I think it's now taken a big escalation, and that we're going to get into the very serious stage of this through the rest of this year and into next year. And then for 4 or 5 years after that, it'll trail down. But we've got 3I Atlas. 3I Atlas released maybe millions of probes in our solar system. 3I Atlas stationed something at Jupiter, a permanent kind of a something. And there's been all kinds of other activity ever since 3I Atlas has come into solar system. We've had the sun get really wonky. We've had all these fireballs. I'm convinced the Earth is being invaded by aliens right now with all these fireballs and stuff, and the Schumann resonance even, right? Something is altering the planetary resonance. It's not coming from the center of the Earth. It's coming from an external source that is causing all of this to go wonky. We live within the 7.823 something hertz level of the Schumann resonance. As it affects that, it affects our minds, and we're all living with it. And so this is a way of softening up the planet for a further invasion of some form, in my opinion. And so I suspect that we're going to get into a very energetic and very exciting, chaotic, bizarre time from this point on. And so it is fitting to me that as we are now going into so we're in a depression globally. Okay, this depression is very much like the 1930s depression. And we're at the same point so in 1930s, so 1929, the stock market crashed. Nobody thought they were in a depression. They didn't think they were in a depression until 1933. In 1932 and 1933, the bonds crashed. There was a giant bond crash globally for the bonds that backed the US dollar. It all comes down to that. The Federal Reserve prints notes. We accept them as dollars, but they're backed by other people putting money back into the system through the bonds. Okay, and so when they crashed in 1932 and 1933, there was a giant deflationary wave that went through our social order. Money dried up, liquidity dried up, jobs dried up, everything dried up because there was no circulating purchasing power. That was the aspect of the liquidity that caused all the problems. So from 33 onward, we knew we were in a depression. Everybody talked about it that way. These 2 years, 26 and 27, are the equivalent of 32 and 33. Our bonds are crashing right now. They've been doing it for months. This is what's deflating the stock market. This is what's deflating cryptos, causing deflation in purchasing power everywhere, which affects deflation in terms of causing deflation in terms of people's idea for business growth and all of this, right? Plus, we now have the added aspects of AI entering the picture and all of these sorts of things. So I actually don't think AI data centers are a big deal, and we won't be doing them in 5 years. They just won't exist.
Thank you. I was just going to ask you how you felt about the AI data centers. It's nice to hear you say that because
it's a temporary little thing, right? So we go through these huge social order things all the time. So in the 1930s, for instance, a big deal was warehouses. We had warehouses all through World War II and into the 50s. Then in 60s, they came up with this idea of just-in-time delivery systems, where the warehouse was the actual transportation system, and you didn't put it in a house to then later on distribute it, right? And so now in the 60s, we started doing away with all these warehouses. So our industrial landscape changed dramatically as all the warehousing consolidated into just a few giant ones. And then we got into the distribution system. We're in another wave of that right now, where we're going to have these social order changes, right? So maybe in the next few years, you'll see all the sports stadiums torn down. All of the big malls torn down or repurposed, this kind of thing, because they're not going to be effective. We're not ever going back to the mall culture, right?
Thank God.
Yeah, exactly. And our social order has completely changed. Now we're going to have to redo it, though, because we're at the peak, the pinnacle of the demiurge being able to corrupt us. And it can't do it anymore. It can't. So we're beyond the woke. It's dying. COVID is dying. All of these scams are falling away. And
let's get them, Cliff. Let's kick their asses.
Exactly.
Cliff and I are both martial artists. I've done martial arts since I was a kid. I know Cliff his entire life, and I'm telling you guys, just on the subject of harmonics and meridian points and centering yourself, martial arts, I swear to God, it is the best kept secret of humanity. Even if you're not into violence and you don't like, it's not about hitting. Especially if you're not into violence. Martial arts, I really think, might save one of the things that's going to help save the world, because it's all about energy manipulation, understanding the balances, the checks and balances of your own body, the release points where you can bring energy in, release energy out. It's just like the best thing ever. I say, let's cut me and Cliff loose on these motherfuckers, and
let's get it going. Right. Let's go.
Yeah. No, because like a lot of the people in power, they're very cowardly people. They're heartless, they're spineless. They use a lot of the tools and tricks that they use because they know that that's a way to circumvent facing down their biggest contenders, which is the warrior class. World War I, World War II.
That is true. Everybody I've ever met that was in the elite is a physical coward.
Completely spineless, brittle. They don't take, they don't, because they don't have to. And the brother wars, the war, all of the wars that cut down some of the greatest bloodlines that we have, some of the strongest, most, promising bloodlines for the future. We needed those bloodlines. They were cut down, I believe, because that was a means of controlling future populations by getting white men, the brothers, to kill each other. I know we're kind of teetering on some race stuff here, but really,
so there's only the human race. All right. Okay. So everything else is a minor subdivision. So anybody on the planet here is part of the human race. You may say that, oh, well, there's Neanderthals or maybe Zinjanthropus DNA hanging around somewhere, but they're not coherent and so on. So I don't look at it at that way, right? Everybody's minds are being manipulated to cause cross-cultural contention at this point, because that is the last weapon, one of the last weapons of our enemy, is to keep us fighting each other.
I understand. Okay. But would you agree with me at the very least, because this is a tough one for me. I have to personally move past this. But would you agree that like fundamentally, like Islam is not compatible with Western culture?
Oh, sure. 100%. No question. Islam's
Okay.
not even a culture. Okay. Islam as a religion is not compatible with any culture. We know this. Okay. We have demonstrable proof of this. Nobody who is a Muslim refugee ever seeks asylum in another Muslim country.
Right. Why is that? I'd like to know.
Because
Is that
they don't want to live under Islam. Right. And yet they import it and
see.
they want to bring it to wherever. Also, you have to understand the terrible, evil, distorted history of all the religions. So the Old Testament was written approximately 400, 500 years ago in a small area of Russia. And that's where it emerged, right? The whole thing about Constantine and the Council of Nicaea, it's 100% horseshit. Didn't happen that way. The Old Testament didn't exist at that time. Constantine and all of this was medieval. It was never ancient Rome. So we're living in a world where there's been an extra 1,000 years of history put in there to distort our understanding of ourselves. We're living in a world where our mental paradigm provides us the filter for which we see our reality. If you distort our understanding and mental paradigm, we won't be able to see things in our reality. We'll just look around it, right? This is another one of those evil aspects of this very intense, deep warfare. And we are indeed entering, in my opinion, entering into the point where it breaks out. Now, when it breaks out, it's going to be extremely chaotic, okay? Because there will be people like us, and we will ally ourselves with people like the Lincoln Project, these intense, righteous Zionist Christians that exist within the Department of War, okay, in the government. You and I will have them as our allies because they're not part of our enemy. We may not agree with them and we may think that they're full of shit in terms of their understanding of things, but they're essentially not negatively disposed towards us. And so we will accept them and we'll all be fighting against all of these. So we'll be fighting with people that are Islamic, right? I have many, many people I deal with that are compatible with me that are Islamic. I don't accept their religion because I understand it was created as an offshoot of Catholicism. It was actually created by the Catholic Church. And even if you read into the literature, okay, so if you read into the official history, there was only one Quran ever written. Bullshit. They found multiple ancient copies, different entirely within them. But here's the thing about the Quran. It was created by 3 Christian women. Okay, even in its own history, it was created by 3 Christian women because what happened was this shepherd took refuge in a cave. And there he said that his mind was seized by the mind of Gabriel. And Gabriel told him 3 times, recite, recite, recite. And he started theoretically reciting the whole of the Quran that his 9-year-old wife later on put down into paper because she was literate and he was not. Okay, so at that point, though, when he had that recite episode, he comes out of the cave, he goes home, he sees his 2 wives, and they and he tells them, I'm having, I had a stroke, I'm dying, my brain is shot, something happened to me, I don't know what the fuck's going on, and I need to, really watch out because I've been seized by a demon or whatever. And anyway, his wife went to the neighbors who were these 3 Christian women and told them about this because these 3 Christian women were gurus, so to speak, right? And they came back and told Muhammad, no, you're not crazy. You've actually had an encounter with an angel. And they provided the name for the angel, Gabriel. They provided the structure that allowed him to see this in that particular way. And thus the religion was born. And so that's the understanding of it. And the real understanding of all of this is that this did not happen 600 years after the period of Christ. This is a relatively recent occurrence that was almost simultaneous with the writing of the Old Testament. So it was all an organized kind of a deal. So Islam is a way to conquer. So, so I, if someone were to try and build a mosque around here, I would spend every dime I had to get myself a bell and put it up and ring it constantly, right? Because it'll be disrupting to them. And that's why they can't stand the bells being rung in Christian cities when they're trying to colonize it. And so there's all of this sort of thing. But it's not just Islam, right? There's all kinds of religions that are being used for non-humane reasons. Yes. And we see that with Christianity and all of this kind of thing. Now, personally, I think we're on this cusp, and that we're actually entering into it this summer. And that I'm thinking maybe by July or August, timing at that level is very difficult to project. It might be December for all I know. But we're going to get this episode where we start having, and maybe it's connected to the Schumann resonance, who knows, right? But the data that I had way back in the year 2000 went on for 14, 15 years in those sets, was talking about a global Christian, I won't say revival. I've used that word in the past, but this is different. This is many, many millions of people declaring themselves to be Christians, okay, and abandoning their old religion to the point where they come out and do it openly because there's so many of them that they don't fear repercussion. So right now, if you're a Muslim and you come out, especially if you're a female, and you come out and say you're a Christian, you had a dream and Christ came to you and now you're a Christian, they'll do everything they can to kill you and isolate you.
They'll kill you. Yeah.
Get you out of there, right? Okay, so there will be so many people, as was described in the data sets, that they won't be able to do that. And that we would have, the data sets described days we would wake up and we'd read headlines like, 5,000 people in Lebanon converted to Christ overnight because of dreams. Now, maybe this is all due to the Schumann resonance, right? And that this is that maybe we're being manipulated at that level by an outside force. Whatever it is, my data sets had picked it up way the hell back when, and we're living through that now. So if the data sets back then, and my understanding is accurate, then we'll go through this year, we'll have this experience, and then it'll get ever so much more bizarre next year as we start actually at one level within the social order, taking apart the old paradigm and trying to patch together a new one because the aliens are here and we got to deal with them, right? Yeah. And they don't see things the way we see things. Aliens cannot be assumed to have a religion. So there's religion and then there's theology, okay? There's philosophy and then there's metaphysics. So theology is to religion as metaphysics is to philosophy. Philosophy is what Aristotle and all these people used to do. That's really bordering on physics because it wants to describe our reality. Metaphysics is where you start speculating about the causes, the motivations, and the mechanisms of things that you can actually observe within your philosophy. So metaphysics is like, it's all speculation. Religion is a feeling we all have. That feeling is when we perceive our own spirit, our own non-visible, non-corporeal part of ourselves, and we perceive it. I am spirit. I can feel it within me, right? You get the fingers tingling, maybe it's a song. In my case, maybe it's a gorgeous woman you happen to see and your whole body becomes alive, that sort of thing, right? And so you feel the spirit. So that's religion. Religion is when I feel that spirit and I express it. I acknowledge it, I'm recognizing it, and I'm aligned with it, and I'm expressing it. And so religious feeling comes out, even in churches when we're doing the singing and all of that, that expression. That is actual religion. Theology is where we try and put personalities and make us think that those feelings are because of these personalities, right? Yahweh, Jesus, the devil, whatever the hell, right? It does not matter. All of those are inventions. They're speculations. They're just like the metaphysics. They don't really relate to the religious feeling. The data sets I had were describing this religious feeling going through humanity from whatever source for a number of years, like maybe a decade or longer. Maybe it's external. Maybe the space aliens are beaming this religious feeling or energies down to us. Doesn't matter much. What will happen, though, according to the data set description, is that a lot of people that are now in some other religion will take this expression of this feeling coming to them, and they'll convert to Christianity because they really don't think of any other way to express it, right? So it's not so much that Christ is coming down and talking to them as they are having this understanding of their own spirit, and their minds just don't have any other way to connect it to their reality. And so it's not to denigrate Christianity or anything like that. In fact, I wrote my book on Christ's sayings about manifestation, right? The Gospel of Thomas there. So I'm just saying that this is a natural outgrowth. If we lived in a different reality, maybe that religious feeling would come through and everybody would convert to Mohammedanism. In our reality, that's not going to happen.
No.
And this is going to cause a great deal of consternation for those people that are involved in promoting and trying to get Islam to conquer the world. So it's going to be just wonky as hell these next few years around these kind of subjects. In the midst of all of that, we're going to have an emergence of a new paradigm that will provide a lot of people with a level of solidity from which they can operate, and that it'll eventually become the paradigm over time, actually fairly rapidly as we get into the discussion with the space aliens about things, because they don't operate on our understanding of Cartesian space. Our physics doesn't mean anything to them. And so we need to up-level ourselves to deal with it. And that's where we're at the moment, is we're heading into this very great period of time. These next year and a half are going to just be incredible. And then the next 5 years after that, it will take us that long to absorb and understand what has occurred here.
Naturally, people are slow to get it. They receive it instantly, but that sort of decode, it has like an extended release effect. So you bring up so many phenomenal points. I'm just trying to keep up here. So if you see my eyes darting around, that's just how I take mental notes. But so something I wanted to mention. So when it comes to like the sounds and sound warfare, the removal of the bells, we no longer have those acoustics to remind and calibrate us to our origins. I think they help remind us of our history. They help,
well, it's more than just our mind. It's an actual physical effect. The vibration.
It's literally, right. It's literally harmonics.
Right.
And whether we care to consciously realize it or not, we are all susceptible to harmonics because we're all beings of frequency. And so, a lot of you guys listening have probably heard the sensational headlines about these Islamic communities here in the US in various, mostly in blue states. But they are allowing the Islamic religious people to blast their prayers in place of where there may have at one point been church bells. Now they're blasting prayers. Now, this is something, it's just insult to injury. I come from a military and government background, so it's just very difficult for me to justify all of the sacrifice that my people have made to fight Islam overseas, just to bring them here and to crowd and congest our atmosphere with these sounds that don't represent our truth whatsoever. So to me, it's almost like a polluting of the airwaves.
It's a weapon. It's a weapon. They're actually attacking your mind, right?
Yes.
They're attacking your sense of stability and self, etc. Yeah, it's a weapon.
It's totally a weapon. And then also, when you mentioned the data, super fascinating, because as you mentioned, this conversion, this mass conversion to Christianity, I believe that there's also a possibility that instead of it being, okay, I accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, which if you do, that's great. If you don't, that's great. That's a personal thing. But I think there's also a possibility that it has something to do with an acceptance of the original configuration, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the electric, the magnetic, and then there's a third part, and it's escaping me here. But it's actually more about a configuration and maybe less about Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. I convert to Christ. So, and I'm not saying, listen, I'm Jesus Christ is my homie. I love Jesus Christ. I love the teachings of Jesus Christ. Christians, not so much, because they have a weird idea about the work that I do. And they take everything so literal. And I'm like, you can miss me with that bullshit. But I think that there is something to the acceptance of an original configuration, a balance and a harmony, where people are like, okay, we know this about ourselves, we accept it, and we're not kidding around anymore, and this is where we want to go. This is the harmonic, these are the harmonics that we accept as our truth, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. But it really could be, the positive, the negative, the neutral.
Sure, the labels don't matter.
Right.
You're quite correct. So you're describing what the data has described. So the data would describe this, where the interesting part for me was this initial few years where we had these large sets of people that were all having common dreams. That was really what got to me and affected me, right? Because they would have thousands of people have a similar dream in the same night. So that always spoke to me of some kind of mass control. But you're quite correct in this understanding. The issue is that it's much more insidious, the way that all of this is going down, and we miss a lot of that because we're only looking at the surface aspect. But we are affected by having Muslim people live here because they're going to have a different level of vibration, different responses, and so on. And so cross-culturalism does not make sense, right? It's all fine and good to have other cultures, but you can't really meld them into a single nation, right? A nation has to be basically of its own construction. But also something you said there about the Christianity. So the data sets would have this wave of Christianity come through, but it's part of the building process, the conversion process of this new paradigm. The new paradigm will go on for thousands of years. Perhaps the Christian aspect of it will fall away in 20 years, and we'll just be left with the new paradigm of and an understanding of ourselves as energy. And so maybe there will be people that would still use the Father, Son, Holy Ghost talk, and maybe not. Maybe that will just drop off as being an anachronism now that we're into this new paradigm where we're dealing with space aliens, and we can actually deal with, negating gravity by dealing with vibration, curing people from diseases by dealing with vibration, et cetera, et cetera. Once we get a closer understanding of ourselves in this reality, then the theocracy, the speculation putting personalities to our religious feeling will fall away, and we'll simply be left with religious feeling, right? And so, and that's the valuable part. Really, you don't care about the stuff that's written in the book, right? You care about the experience of the feeling itself. Without the experience of that religious feeling, the book may as well just be a comic book. Right?
So it's almost, it feels like a kickback to like Gnostic Christianity, where it was, less about the people involved and more about like the physics behind what it means to be, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. I just wanted to add something here. Is you're going to think this is so crazy, but for most of my youth, I was, how do I want to put it? There was a lot of focus on me by what I would call malevolent energies, and that changed when I became a mother. It changed only when I became pregnant, really. So I equate, pregnancy to motherhood. So as soon as I became pregnant, the attacks stopped.
Well, that's going back to our earlier discussion, right? Then you started having projection energy as opposed to
totally different. Yes.
Right.
I became a formidable, almost, they would shy away that I was not prey.
Natural, because you may be left, the male may be killed, and you may have to fend for yourself and have to protect everybody, right? So, like they say that, and it's true. I would rather face any kind of a male opponent, no matter how big, than a mother defending her children.
100%, 100%. And something I've come to understand over many years of really going back in time and looking at, how it all worked out for me, because I really have my own life to decode. And, I come from a very strange background. A lot of strange things went on.
All that space alien stuff. Yep.
All the space alien stuff. Something I've come to understand. Now, I don't want to define the term alien because that's likely a very broad category. However, I have come to understand that in order to protect oneself, say you find yourself, anybody listening out there, if you find yourself the subject of malevolent targeting, say there is a history of abduction or visitations that are not good, they make you feel bad, it feels like it's against your will, you don't consent. The most powerful protective moves or strategy that you can take against something like this does have to do with a family unit, a mother, a father, and progeny. where that trifecta seems to exist, these abductions, these visitations, this sort of malevolent, non-consensual happenings, it ceases. So in my situation, my father being who he is, my mother being out to lunch, I was basically left vulnerable, and I had no protective trifecta. There was no father, mother, progeny. I was just out in the open. And in occult tradition, the mother and the father have spiritual authority over the child between right up until the age of reason, which is about 12 or 13, depending on what you consult with.
Well, or a little later these days.
Well, these days, right. I mean, I feel like I feel like I just woke up 2 years ago. I'm 37
Right.
years old. But realistically, like if you're listening to this and you're like, how do I protect myself? How do I protect my children? It really is very simple. You have spiritual authority over your children. You have to claim that. You can't just leave kids out to the open, because we live in the invisible substrate that we live in is teeming with things that are waiting for some kind of an opening. And so if you have a strong masculine, strong fathers are so important. I think the strong masculine, to your point early on in our conversation here, this distortion meant to confuse and extract focus from the male gender, I think is being done in part to destabilize this perfect trifecta, mother, father, and progeny, so that makes the progeny, which is essentially the future, susceptible to this alien, this nasty, malevolent alien,
Whatever the hell it is.
whatever the hell it is.
The Cathars called it the demiurge.
The demiurge. Okay.
Yeah, and what they say is they went along with the Gnostics,
right.
that what we would call God does not have evil within that being, right? That what we call evil does actually exist, and the Gnostics thought of it as being a separate disembodied entity that brings evil, and that was the demiurge, and that they say that the demiurge created this physical reality in which we find ourselves. Now, I don't buy into the Gnostic understanding of how all of these things came about, nor the relationship to each other. And I think it's much wider, much more, much deeper of an understanding of what's going on. But indeed, we are engaged. We appear to be both the goal, the prize, the treasure, but also the tools of a very great battle between forces that are so much larger than ourselves, we can't even understand them. But to your point there, so you will find that there's various different ways to deal with these energies. Some things actually make real sense. Okay, so in a physical reality, wearing the copper bracelet, the pure copper bracelet, to connect between these electromagnetic energies that are flowing through my veins in the form of the ferritin makes sense. I can alter my own energy flow and coordinate it and so on. This is why certain aspects of some parts of ritual make sense. Not because of the ritual. So some people will have a talisman and they'll think that they're protected by in the act of putting on that talisman. And there's several different layers there. There's the mind effect, right? You actually do have a barrier because you've got a thought that you're protected now, that makes you feel that much stronger.
You believe it, right?
Right. And so you believe it exists. Okay. So you're manufacturing your reality that way. There's also some other more subtle levels. So it was frequently done in Aikido that when women were having struggles with their Aikido, that they would be, that the sensei that I went to, he would hand out hematite bracelets to them. And hematite is a high iron containing mineral. And so it brought them the projection energy of the ferritin that you find naturally within the male blood, right? And so it evened them up relative to the martial art itself. A couple of the women also said that, wearing the hematite seemed to give them a mental calmness, right? It brought them into more harmony with themselves and the environment. And I knew a couple of these women that initially took it as like kind of a talisman, a ritual, an award, or something like that. And then they became so enamored of it, they would never take it off. And so one woman in her professional job couldn't wear the bracelet because of what she did. She was EMT. And, you got to be careful of all this stuff, right? Electrics and this kind of thing. So she had a hematite necklace. And because she always wanted to have the hematite next to her. And so there are these physical things. Now, I don't get involved with ritual. I like the pragmatic aspect of the copper bracelet, but, I don't think of myself as being, protected, so to speak. I don't imbue any kind of supernatural energy into the copper itself. I just deal with it as a pragmatic aspect of our environment. But I also recognize that we can deal with our minds this way, that anybody can set up within their minds protective barriers through words, which would be a spell, a God's spell, a gospel. It would be your own gospel. We came across this idea in Avestan, which predates Sanskrit. It's concurrent with Sanskrit for a great deal of time, but it predates it. It originated earlier than Sanskrit. So who the fuck knows how old it is, right? Anything is just a guess. But one of the ideas in one of these hymns was the repetition of the God's spell, the gospel. At the beginning of this was sort of their disclaimers, right? And this would protect you from harmful energies because you were setting up rhythmic vibrations within your mind that were inimical to those forces that would cause you problems. Now, some of these hymns were incredibly detailed, literally 2 or 3 or 4 1,000 lines. And some of them went into some detail about, to protect your mind from this kind of thing, which was like anxiety or whatever, they would use these words. And so they had it down to a refined system, all of which is lost in the past. But this is why you will find many of these guys, especially with the manifestation crew and stuff, that will have these, let's call them ritualized sayings or mantras. And this is why the mantra works. Okay, also the mudra. So if you want to get money, there's specific ways you hold your hands. And if you look at Elon and all these people, they're always holding their hands in specific mudras, right? Right. And then there's some really complex ones where your fingers are all twisted together and so on. These things work because they change the energy direction of the flow within your body. And you can get the same effect with, causing that energy to be permanently connected through bracelets and other things. And all this stuff actually works, but let's not put too much emotion on it as being a supernatural thing in and of itself. It's just a part of our practical reality, right?
Let us have some fun, Cliff.
No, go ahead and have fun all you want, right? Just be advised, though, that if you use these mudras to, attract a person or something like that, may not necessarily work out the way you want.
I can tell you. Trial and error over here, folks. Trial and error.
So you have to go?
I don't have to go. No. I don't want to keep you too long.
No. I'm just sitting around here waiting for the rain to end so I can go out and do chores. So I've got plenty of time, Jenny. No worries.
Oh, thank you. See, guys, Clif is just a national treasure. So there's just so much. Like, also hearing you talk, I'm getting like a German Shepherd in my mind's eye. Did you grow up with a German Shepherd, or
I had a German Shepherd named Satan. He was 100% black. and I did that as a joke because Satan is the word for lawyer, right? That's what it means, a lawyer or advocate.
Interesting. So yeah, just folks, as Cliff is talking, I have a million things running through my mind as he's talking. I'm trying to retain as much as I can, but I just got this German Shepherd, very regal looking, a lot of energy held right in between the shoulders and the neck. So there's just a great deal of regal energy there. I think, because a lot of times people are wondering, well, who can we trust? Who are our allies? People are so messed up. Humanity is so messed up. We're so, what do we turn to this deity? Do we turn to Jesus? What do we turn to? I know this is going to sound really weird, but I believe that cats, dogs, I think that they are I see them as an allied force. I really do. Wolves. There's something about the canine and the feline race. There's something about them. I don't know if it's, here on Earth, they take on the four consciousness because they're four-legged, and then maybe on another level of reality or another, another material existence. They are, I don't know if they're have four legs or if they're bipedal. I'm not sure. A lot of folks that I know have talked about having benevolent encounters with dog people and cat people as well. I think they're called the Lyrans, but there's all kinds of myth and folklore around benevolent werewolves, benevolent wolf men, wolf people that were actually very protective, and they weren't bloodthirsty, violent, as some myth would have us believe. But I do think that there is something to humanity leaning back into our origins. And it's kind of like what you said earlier. It's complex and complicated, but it's like simple. Like there's a simplicity to it that is so, I mean, it's divine. And that's why it makes sense. The trees, the resonance of the trees, the resonance of the bells.
Well, to the point of the trees, you know that you actually change your heart rate and the affected electromagnetic field hugging a tree. And that,
right.
If you have trees, especially big ones like I do, fir trees and stuff around here, you can perform an experiment. You don't have to take a whole month. Just set aside like 10 days and make a habit of going out every morning or every evening, do it at the same time every day, and go hug the tree. And then analyze yourself at the end of those 10 days and see how you feel, right? You'll feel differently. You actually do. You're altered by it.
100%. I will often go hiking. I know you're not supposed to go hiking alone, but I'm not afraid. And I go hiking alone all the time. But I did this thing where I would spit into my hand, and all four corners, if there was a north, south, east, and west, and if I could make it, I would let the trees know who I was by exchanging my saliva, which had my genetic makeup and also, my physical essence, and introduce myself to the trees of this particular place. But I tried my very best, like upon entrance and upon leaving, let the trees know I'm here, I'm your friend, and please remember me, always remember me, because the networks can span for many, many, many miles. So
millions of years. Right.
For sure. So it's
they're tied into the mycelium of the fungus and everything in the soil, right?
And we're part of it. I like to see us as part of it. And I see that as really, I think it's instrumental in helping to aid humanity navigate this war into a future that is best, that is better. Maybe it's
more harmonious to us, right? That we're not so out of sync with everything. Yeah.
Also, cats, to your point about the frequencies, when a cat, if you guys have ever had a cat like come sit on you and they purr, they actually lower cortisol and they help to calibrate that human to their frequency. Have you ever had a cat make biscuits on you?
Yeah, need you.
Yeah.
And
purr, and you just feel better. They're healing us.
Yeah.
So
well, that's why you have these animals in nursing homes and hospitals and stuff sometimes, right?
Service
here's the thing about that. So all animals of any kind, all the way down to bacteria, are all in an evolutionary process. They're a spark. So we start as a spark, and that spark then gains a body. And maybe it's a mosquito for a few thousand mosquito lives, right? And it keeps evolving, keeps growing as a spark, gaining more experience. And then it becomes each and every one of these species as it matures along to us. And when at some point we will pass, we will die, and then we won't incarnate as a human. We'll incarnate as something else. It won't be lower form. It won't be a four-legged animal. It won't be something that swims in the ocean, but it'll be something else, right? Likely not in this material plane. Because we don't see those around. But nonetheless, we're all on this journey, evolving our way back into the absolute. Okay, so we're here to learn. We are universe seeing itself, experience itself. And that's our purpose. And so we have a purpose for universe, and this is great. Anybody who tries to tell you it's all random chance, it's just these two things bashing into each other that creates life, they're full of shit, right? Yeah. So they're trying to take away your purpose. If you have a purpose for your life, then when you die, you will have died for something, right? So if you don't have any purpose, then you're dying for no damn reason, right? Your whole life didn't exist for any reason at all. What a terrible, horrible thing. So in my opinion, we need to get a Yeah, our part of our new paradigm needs to address that humans need to understand their role in reality and have a purpose in life. And that we should have this taught to us in our schooling. It should be at our mother's knee, that kind of thing, from the very beginning. You are valuable. You have value to universe, not just to me, but to the whole fucking universe. You're a valuable thing. And you're going to do great things with your life. No matter what it is, it will be absolutely perfect because universe is seeing itself and experiencing itself through your body and your mind. And so as long as you recognize that you are not separate from universe, you live within inside it, that you cannot separate yourself from the mind of the absolute. So you live within what people I call it laughingly, call God. So in my opinion, there is the absolute. So I have this particular harsh level of Gnostic understanding. It's very harsh because it accepts the darkness, right? It's called radical acceptance. Okay. And the radical acceptance movement is that we have darkness within us. I know I have evil within me. I know that if it came to it, I could be the most horrid, disgusting killer on the planet because I would be absolutely methodical in achieving the goal, which would be the death of the enemy. And I would care nothing about that. So I wouldn't be sadistic. I would just be brutal about it, right? Quick and effective. Okay, so I acknowledge that. This is not a good thing, right? I can cause hurt and damage. I could be cruel and not even think about it, right? I could just do it as a tactic. I wouldn't take pleasure from it, but I could do that. Acknowledging that we have this darkness within us is necessary as a part of this radical acceptance, that we get a realistic appraisal of ourselves. And so I can choose. So here's the thing. We live in the eternal now. There's no past, there's no future. Jenny has a decision ahead of her. She has an infinite stream of decisions ahead of her. She need not think about any of those decisions except the very next one that she has to make. Because we live in this eternal now, the future doesn't exist. Every one of the decisions in your life hang on the next decision you will make. So if you're a smoker and you want to quit, then what you have to do is you have to make the decision to not smoke that cigarette now. Just let it go. Maybe you'll smoke it in 20 minutes. Maybe you won't smoke it for an hour or two. But you chose in that minute to not smoke, in spite of the subconscious forcing you to, trying to force you to, the withdrawal, all of this. So it is that instant. So every decision you face determines the shape of the rest of your life. So you'll make decisions today that will be still affecting you 30 years from now, maybe even 100 years from now, given where we're at within the social order and the, lifespan and all of that. So make good choices every damn time and you end up with a good life.
Wise and beautiful words from Uncle Clif. You guys heard it from Uncle Clif. And you said something a few minutes ago that I think a lot of people really, really need to hear at a time like this, where things do feel very dark. I use the term precipice, which is not a real word at all, but we're on the precipice of what feels like major change, and it is always darkest before dawn. But the way that I describe it is almost like if do you shoot compound bows or anything?
I have recurves. I have a compound, but I'm not that fond of it.
Okay. I'm a compound girl. But it's that pullback. There is an enormous amount of tension in that pullback, and there is the moment before release. It feels like collectively we are right there about that moment with all that tension and all that potential force. And so such a timely and wonderful message about value. You have value, not just to the people that you're obligated to, but to the universe as a whole. And each and every choice that you make in the now, that's really all you have to worry about. I think that that's such a
correct.
Right.
It's just this one choice. You don't care about anything beyond that, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's really how I manage my life, right? Is that I understand I have value, and even more than value to universe, I have value to myself, and I put that as number one, right? So I will never, ever, ever do anything that would disrespect my image of myself, right? So I can't do evil in that regard. I could choose to be cruel and that sort of thing, but it would be necessary. So but it's because of that self-respect. And it's because I have that self-respect because I started making good decisions in each and every moment. Now, when you start off on this, you're not going to catch yourself because so many of your decisions are made from the subconscious just as a reaction. And it'll take you some time to center in on it such that your mind has a trigger. Oh, I've got to make a decision, so I'd better stop and think about it, right? As opposed to just doing it. And once you start doing that, you find that you get somewhat a little slow in the beginning because you have to stop and think about, do I really want to do this? What are the ramifications, et cetera, et cetera. But once you get into the groove of it, you get right back up to that same level of speed in making the decisions. And then you find it's actually easier because the previous decision you made did not lead to any bad ramifications. It makes it easier for you to make the next decision along those same lines that follow from that, what we call timeline. There is no time and there is no line. It doesn't exist that way. We're always in the eternal now. If you have the ability to do it, you could close your eyes and you could center yourself and you could actually look into the now outside of your body and you could see the event stream forming. And within that event stream, you could see things that are headed towards you that will require you to make decisions. And once you have that view, then you know that these decisions are coming up and you'll have a chance to think about them and make and decide before that flexion point is actually arrived at. And so that provides this level of, once you get to that level, this provides an advantage in dealing with other humans because you're going to be thinking so much faster than them. And you're eliminating all the bad choices that they're going to have to filter through. So you're going to just bypass all of that, right? And this is why we have this thing that they call leadership. And leadership is not politicians or any of that. Leadership is the guy that gets up and just starts doing it because he's going to go do it. And then everybody else around him says, well, hey, that seems like a good idea. And they go along, right? So that person never had any intention of getting the rest of that crowd to follow him. In fact, a lot of people that are leaders don't like people. They don't want to be followed, right? But nonetheless, they find themselves in that role. And that's because they're focusing on making the correct decision for themselves. And that energy ripples out. People are nothing but energy antennas and they feel that. So, so this is like with Corey Good. From the minute I heard him, it was all false. I heard the falsity coming through the computer here in terms of his language. And I knew he was not making good decisions and never had. And so I knew it was bogus. Now, it was a good decision for me to call Corey Good a lying asshole. Okay, in spite of the fact that it involved me in a court case that took lots of thousands of dollars and took years to work through and all of this. I gained very much by handling that court case on my own and doing it pro se and firing my attorneys. So universe wanted me to have that level of understanding, that value in myself. Now I can say, sue me, fucker. I'm going to beat you in court because your attorney's a stupid fucker, right? And I know now that I have that ability. So universe wants us to do these things. I made a decision. It was good at the time. And I maintain that even in spite of because of what came from it, it was a very good decision, right?
Oh yeah, what a debacle. That was one for the books too. I really do think that was a historical thing. I think it's not even fully realized.
It's not done yet. Yeah.
It's not done yet, right? This is an ongoing thing. And it shook the foundations of what they call, the UFO community or the secret space program community and all that stuff. And you are definitely a necessary shockwave, a necessary meteor that hit that scene and really just shook, rattled, and rumbled, all of the falsehoods right out of it. So we can definitely attribute a lot of the changes there to you and that lawsuit and your desire to call it out. And we're dealing with the ramifications of all of the fakers and the fraudsters and all the BS agents in that field that have really done a lot more harm than good.
And they're making bad decisions. It's basically what it comes down to. For whatever motivation, in the moment, they make a bad decision, and we all end up seeing it and having to interact with it to some degree.
I never liked him either. I never did. And I'm a pretty good judge of people right off the bat. I never, I just,
Well, that's
something
because of the
doesn't,
falseness, right?
yes,
Had he
didn't
actually
resonate.
been that way, there wouldn't have been anything to throw a red flag in your mind.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Um, so folks, we're reaching the 2 hour mark. It's always time always flies when Clif and I get together. I could just really listen to him talk and have these discussions all day long. But I think I'll leave you guys with this. Everybody, just thank you so much for your continued support. Thank you so much for being here. Clif, where can people find you if they don't already know?
I have a Substack, Clif underbar high. It's CLIF underbar HIGH. It's Substack, and I have an X account, and that's it. I've got Rumble accounts and stuff, but I just don't use them. I haven't been able to get access to my YouTube account since COVID, so that's all ripoffs and spoofers. I only have those two accounts, right? I'm not that interesting, Jenny. So mostly I prefer people to go and find the actual data and stuff themselves, right?
You are an endless source of information, entertainment. Just there's always something new with Clif, and I am just eternally grateful that I get to have this kind of access to you. I am the subject of a lot of envy and jealousy, and people are like, "Why do you get to talk to him?" I'm like,
Well,
sorry.
you're cool, Jenny, and we have a history, right?
Yes, we do. And it's just, I think it's a product of making good decisions. I've made some really good decisions and they panned out. And this is why I get to do fun stuff like this. So,
Yeah.
folks, if you like this interview, if you like the work that I do, please go ahead and click on the links below. I'm going to provide a link to my Patreon. We've got some new and improved structures over there. And I would love to welcome you all over to my Patreon, where I'm able to do a lot of this work unencumbered. I don't have to censor myself nearly as much as I typically do. And it would be a pleasure and honor to have you over there. Also, if you guys happen to be interested in getting one-on-one consultations / readings with me, just visit my website, jennyconstantine.com. Okay, plugs are all done. Clif, thank you so much.
Sure.
Really, not just professionally, not just my journey on the spiritual path, but personally, you have been a guiding light for me. You love my best friend and you love her fully and wholly and unconditionally. And it makes me very happy to see her loved in
Okay,
that
so
way.
yeah, so I'm gonna start crying. So we
Yeah, I knew
better cut that off, right?
we both are. That's why
Yeah.
I saved it to the end. But folks, really and truly, national treasure over here. Thank you so much, Clif. God bless you. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
And we'll talk again. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Bye.